Arrow Lake dates, EV van pricing, and 9000X3D. Let's get into the hot news, everybody. I'm your Brett host. We're going to be going over the hottest tech news I can find on the internet while you enjoy your breakfast this Thursday, August 22nd, 2024. We're going to start off today talking about new details coming out for Arrow Lake's CPU launch that's supposed to be taking place in just under 2 months. We're anticipating that October 10th is going to be the date that Intel is going to announce their next generation of CPUs, and that the following week is when it's going to launch on October 17th. So this is going to cover the 200K lineup of Arrow Lake, which is the 285, 265, 245Ks, so that's the 5, 7, and 9 lineups, and those will be 14, 20, and 24 core chips respectively. Then after that, we're expecting that the non-K variants and the overclockable ones are going to be launching sometime in Q1 of next year, probably with more announcements happening sometime at CES. Again, there's a lot to at least look forward to when it comes to Arrow Lake and all of the things that they're going to be providing in this new generation. Allegedly supposed to, at least based on leaked benchmarks, be slightly faster than what's currently out on Raptor Lake and Raptor Lake Refresh, but at significantly lower TDP. So maybe closer to a Ryzen 9000 situation, although Ryzen 9000 did take care of a lot of new cool things in the architecture. Arrow Lake might also do some of that as well, especially since it's a redesign, but we'll have to wait and see as more time's coming out. But in case you want to try to cool that CPU, it's not officially announced that they support it. They do support the 13th to 14th gen. You should check out today's video sponsor, Silverstone, and their brand new Nova Peak line of CPU coolers. Nova Peak's a fresh new series that builds on Silverstone's decade-long development in AIO liquid coolers. It's available in 240mm and 360mm sizes, and they have features to match their good looks, such as a 3-phase 6-pole pump for smoother, quieter operation, a slightly convex copper baseplate to allow tighter contact with the CPU, PWM-controlled fans optimized for airflow and pressure, and ARGB lighting. The Nova Peak series is fully compatible with the latest sockets, including LGA 1700 and AMD AM5. You're looking at Ryzen 9000. Arrow Lake not technically officially supported. LGA 1851 ain't out yet, but the Nova Peak line of coolers is, in case you're on current gen Intel and you want to pick it up for whatever's out for AMD as well. Big thanks to Silverstone for sponsoring today's video. You can check out the Nova Peak series of liquid coolers at the link in the video description. And in case you're thinking about partnering it with a B850 motherboard, you're gonna have to wait a little while longer. You can get the CPU cooler now, but the motherboard's gonna be delayed until early 2025. X870 and X870E getting their announcements kind of now. Asus having some announcements over at Gamescom. They likely are to release sometime in September, but X870 and X870E gonna likely be the only motherboard generations that launch this year. And then the B850 and B840, they're not calling it the 830 anymore, likely to launch sometime early next year. The B850 will probably have what most people need: Gen 4 graphics, Gen 5 SSDs, support for CPU memory overclocking, enough PCI Express lanes. The B840 will only have Gen 3 PCI Express graphics, which might limit some things, especially if you're on like a 6500 XT. But the budget stuff will have to wait. But in case you want to buy stuff on a budget right now, Reece has got you covered with UFD Deals.
Yo, welcome back to UFD Deals, bringing the hottest tech deals out on the internet. And if you're still feeling the Borderlands hype from Gamescom, you can actually grab Borderlands 3 for only $5.99. But then next up, we have the Fractal Design Define 7 Mini. This silent noise-dampened MEATX case is going for only $79.97, making it $30.02 off. And then lastly, we have this Acer Nitro 24-inch 1080p 180Hz gaming monitor for only $89.99, making it $60 off. And hey, with that, the deals are done. You can find these and more linked in the video description down below. But until next time, I hand you off back to Brett for the Red Sea Hot News. Cheers.
Well, Reece, it turns out we're actually going to be able to save a little bit of money on Volkswagen's electric van. The ID Buzz officially getting its price point announced here in the US. At least last time it was reported, Volkswagen told people to expect that it was going to start roughly around the $75,000 region here in the US, and it turns out it's a little lower than that, starting at $60,000. This thing will have only rear-wheel drive at that point, but you could get it with all-wheel drive for $70,000. It's going to have a bunch of different color tones that you could potentially get it in. The reason I'm excited about this thing is that it's one of the first fully electric ones with a sliding door, which is a prerequisite for a vehicle that I need for my family. I likely am not picking up ID Buzz, especially starting at $60,000, and with it only having a range of 230 miles total. It's just not enough for my family's needs, but I'm excited that it exists. It's a nice harkening back to the VW vans of old, and I want to see more type of vehicles like this in the EV range, or even just plug-in hybrids. Just get more options on that would be nice moving forward. And moving forward is exactly what Asus accidentally did with their X870 and X870E motherboard launches. They oopsie-doopsie confirmed that 9000X3D is indeed happening. They're going to be coming with the 9000X3D 3D V-Cache CPUs, getting a mention in some of the more obscure sides of the website, including in the URL. And it also reveals that the B850 and 840 motherboards will be coming out as well. This is not necessarily anything new. It just means that we are prepping for a lot more AMD CPU and motherboard coverage moving forward. A little bit of a slow news day when the fact that the 9000X3D is getting mentioned like this is something that we're going to talk about here on Hot News, but hey, what can you do? But you know what wasn't a slow news day? Yesterday. So let's go see what you had to say in the comments. We got SL Thompson saying, I was deathly allergic to peanuts as a child, and when I went to Disneyland in 85, I thought this was Michael for a second, but 85 is way too old for that. We were assured that they did not use peanut oil in their fryers. I realized that might sound like I'm calling you old. I'm not. I'm sorry. That was just Michael's young. We quickly found out they had no effing idea what type of cooking oil was in the deep fryers. Without the EpiPen my mom carried every year, I would not have survived their French fries. Thankfully, I outgrew the allergy before the mouse had another shot at snuffing me out. Oof. Good thing Disney Plus didn't exist back then. Then we got one Grainer saying G-Sync is obsolete. You can have an Alienware OLED DW with G-Sync and no updates, and DWF with FreeSync and updates that made that display better for $100 less. Kind of no-brainer to avoid G-Sync as it's locked up as any NVIDIA tech. Well, yeah, it's kind of been obsolete because they haven't really been making a whole lot of them. So like the G-Sync Pulsar is supposed to be the new iteration, whereas like regular G-Sync has been deprioritized. That was the kind of the discussion that was happening. G-Sync Pulsar is going to be the new way moving forward, and NVIDIA from like 2019 until 2024 really didn't do a whole lot with G-Sync monitors. Hence, yeah, I agree with you that they're obsolete, but that doesn't necessarily mean that moving forward, buying an NVIDIA G-Sync Pulsar panel is going to be something that people won't consider. And then we got Angel saying, it's a bad sign when they rather sell you 2 new SKUs of the last 2 gens of X3D than the new current one. To which mine corrected, it's SKUs. It's actually an acronym that stands for stock keeping units. So when people say SKUs, they're not, it's an acronym that they're pronouncing as a word, just as information for you. But I don't know that it's a bad sign. I think, you know, if you're saying that they'd rather give us 2 last gen of X3D rather than a new X3D, I think it just needs more time in the oven. That's exactly what happened with each X3D variant. It takes a little bit more time than the latest architecture. They have to design the architecture and then build 3D V-Cache into it. It doesn't feel like it's something that happens at the same time, even if there might be some concurrent components to it. But if you're saying they're trying to give us X3D as opposed to the new generation, I don't think that's a bad sign either. 9000 has a lot of good stuff about it that might not necessarily be worth jumping on for a lot of gamers, but it doesn't mean that AMD didn't do a lot of good architecturing, engineering. I don't know if it's a bad sign. I think the 5500 X3D coming out is AMD's commitment to AM4, which has just been astounding and something that I continuously want to celebrate. The 7600 X3D I just think makes a lot of sense. As long as it's not a Micro Center exclusive, I think they needed another X3D chip. A Ryzen 5 with X3D makes a lot of sense for a lot of people. It's not as if the 9000 series shouldn't exist, because the 9600X will work better in a lot of workflows than the 7600 X3D, whereas the X3D is just going to be a gaming focused chip. It's going to be the thing that gamers buy, whereas if you're using AVX 512 stuff, a 9600X is going to make a lot more sense. So it's getting more segmented. I don't know if it's a bad sign. It's a sign for you to stop watching this episode of Hot News. Speaking of, we're buying signs because we got a new office. We didn't buy it. We're going to be leasing a new office. So things are going to change around here. Goodbye.